my whole life I was psychic. But what I found very early on is the pets were showing up in my mediumship sessions. I would get some really wild stories from these pets, and I'm thinking like, I don't have their mom and dad telling me, yes, that's right, or no, that's not. She didn't know what was wrong with the dog, and I was like, oh, well, this is what's wrong. And she took the dog to the vet, and she comes back, and she's like, that's exactly it. And I realized in that moment that I really started to have more of an ability than I understood initially. So it really created the ability to totally, completely, utterly trust the pets, no matter what, even if it doesn't land with the pet owner. I'm not the interpreter. I just am the telephone operator, and I just share the information, and I let you be the interpreter.
Welcome everyone to the Reconnect Self podcast, the show that helps you ultimately rediscover what brings you joy. My name is Scott. I am your host. I'm also a filmmaker. And as always, I'm here with my wife, Tracey, who is a counsellor with 15 years experience in private practice, a qualified breathwork instructor. We actually have 2 qualified breathwork instructors on the show today, and a certified psychedelic assisted therapist. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very excited about today's guest.
Yeah, we have your good friend on.
Yes. How nice is that?
All right. Well, I may as well just introduce them.
Jump in.
Get straight into it. Okay. Today we're joined by our friend Britta Grubin. Tracey met Britta last year during their breathwork training in Bali. Tracey would send me videos of her and Britta doing karaoke as part of their getting comfortable on the microphone training. So that's how I got introduced to Britta. And we're lucky that she's in Perth today. So Britta is a certified evidential psychic medium, animal communicator, and intuitive mentor who works with both living pets and those who've crossed over. She offers deep insight, comfort, and connection through her work, and she also teaches classes on communication and intuitive development. Very excited to have her here to share her story, how she's developed this gift, and how animal communication can transform the way we relate to the animals we love. Welcome, Britta.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Is that intro all accurate?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And for anyone that knows me personally, the fact that I have a medium friend is very exciting.
Well, it's very on brand.
My first medium friend.
Yeah.
Yes, I was very excited.
Yeah, so you're obviously a qualified breathwork instructor. That's how you guys met, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about one of the things you do, which is communicating with animals. So I guess the first question has to be, how did you get started doing this?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. So, my whole life I was psychic. I grew up as the kid that knew what the test score was going to be before the teacher handed back the tests. I knew who was going to win the spelling bee. And as time went on, I actually realized I had a gift that was far beyond what many of my friends had. And I really stepped into my gift in my 30s after my youngest child was born. And that is where the window of mediumship and psychic abilities really opened up on a professional basis. But what I found very early on is the pets were showing up in my mediumship sessions. So I would be connecting to a father in spirit, and he would be showing me his little mini Dachshund that he'd be sitting next to on a park bench as he was communicating with me with his daughter that would be sitting across from me. So I realized that the pets were really starting to come in force, but never thinking I was going to actually do animal communication. And it really wasn't until a couple years into my professional work that I had been talking to my mom, and she's talking about one of the dogs, and she didn't know what was wrong with the dog. And I was like, oh, well, this is what's wrong with the dog. And she took the dog to the vet, and she comes back and she's like, that's exactly it. That's what's wrong with the dog. And I realized in that moment that I really started to have more of an ability than I understood initially about the pets. And so for about a year, I quietly practiced with my own self, with my parents' pets, and with some friends. And then I went professional. But how I went professional is what's really unique. And so what I do today and what I did then as a psychic medium is I see all my clients remotely. So they come to me on Zoom, and I can talk to them globally all over the world. My team, my spirit team, who I'm incredibly connected to, told me the way to actually communicate with the pets. And it was a trust exercise. And I was to actually just receive a photo of the pet and do a recording and send this recording off to the pet owner. And what I found was it was incredibly challenging as a trust exercise because I would get some really wild stories from these pets. And I'm thinking like, I don't have their mom and dad telling me, yes, that's right, or no, that's not.
This is just you going, okay, I'm just going to put down what I'm getting.
Yeah. And so I did that for years, and people were just like, this is unbelievable. This is amazing. This is really great. And then I slowly started to offer in my one-on-one Zoom sessions, which now today, that's what I do. I do my one-on-one Zoom sessions for pet parents along with still my emailed animal recordings. And then I also still do my psychic mediumship work. So it really created the ability to totally, completely, utterly trust the pets no matter what. Even if it doesn't land with the pet owner, I still tell the pet owner, put it in a parking lot, and in the couple days to a week, the pet's going to amplify something that maybe you didn't understand in the session. And even just yesterday, I had a client who this happened to, and she, her deceased dog had shown me their pet heaven, and so that's very common for the deceased pets to show me their pet heaven. And you would think like, well, what's the evidence? How is the evidence going to show itself? And this particular dog was bringing forth a woman in spirit, and it was showing me that she was mother. I wasn't sure if it was her mother or not, but a motherly figure. And she said, no, my mom is here. She's not in spirit. And I said, no, your dog is showing me this woman. And the dog gave me a J name, and I repeated this J name. And I'm not great with names. I'll tell people that right away. I'm about 40% accurate, and from the dogs too. And sure enough, she couldn't take it. So we kept going. I said, no problem, put it in a parking lot. Then her deceased dad shows up in the session, and her deceased dad wouldn't let go of this woman that she couldn't place. And so the dog and the dad are telling me this information, and all of a sudden it dawned on her. And she says, oh my gosh, that's my mom's best friend that just died last week, and her name is Janet.
Oh my goodness, that literally gave me like goosebumps.
So that was the J name.
Yeah, wow.
And that's where you have to trust the pet. Like I trust it. And so I'm not the interpreter. I just am the telephone operator, and I just share the information, and I let you be the interpreter.
I love how you're called an evidential medium, which means you're bringing through the evidence because sometimes people always say to me, they're just making stuff up, or how do they know, or they look at your Facebook or that. And I've been knowing about mediums and clairvoyance and things, since a teenager, and always had the most incredible experiences where I knew that information, back then it wasn't even social media, but I've known that information could not have come from anywhere else. Like, they're not guessing, they're not reading my body language. Like, it's such specific information. And so I love watching your social media, because you'll often put up your clips where you're doing a reading with someone and you'll talk through something that's just come through, and you watch the person's face as it lands or as they're making that connection. And I just love that, because that's when people realize, you're actually getting this information that is just so profound.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had another example yesterday. I have lots of stories, but I had another woman yesterday, and she had another deceased dog in spirit, and the dog was talking about a sign, and the dog was showing me a red bird. And I said, I'm looking at a red bird. I'm pretty sure it's a red cardinal. It's not a robin unless it's got a lot of red on it. It's definitely a cardinal. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she said, just 2 days ago, I was teaching my daughter to drive in the car, and she says, and I don't ever see red birds where we live. And she said, we saw a red cardinal, and we were debating in the car if it was a robin or a cardinal.
Oh my God, that's exactly what you just said.
Just like the dog was saying. So that was like another layer of evidence beyond just the bird. Yeah. And that's how specific the dogs can be. It's absolutely mind-blowing, because it's limitless. The soul is limitless, and that's what's happening.
That's amazing.
So we should clarify, you also do people, but today's show we're going to specify about pets. One question I had is, as you realized that you had these gifts, A, did it freak you out? And B, how did you develop it? Like, you sort of mentioned, you'd tune into your pets at home when you were younger. And what age did it start? Like, I want to get a little bit more of your backstory.
Yeah, so I grew up on a small farm as a kid growing up, and I always loved the pets, but I wasn't your typical, I guess what maybe some people would think as like a pet person. I've never had 9 cats or, 20 dogs. I had 1 cat growing up as a child, and I never really had what I thought was any different of a connection with the pets. What I believe and how it all started was truly my intuitive psychic abilities, and it just unfolded from there. And so what I've come to learn is when the soul opens, the soul opens. And someone would say, well, you know, you didn't start out your work as a psychic medium or an animal communicator until your 30s. Does that mean you didn't have it your whole life? And the answer is no. You actually do have it your whole life, but you are meant to live a human experience.
Yeah.
And so even if it was opened up a little bit as a child, it usually will shut down around the time the kid's later in high school, going on to university.
This is my friend's daughter right now. She was very, very open to spirit and would say things and see things when she was in primary school. In fact, she would freak us out sometimes, some of the things that she would say. But then in high school, she's really closed that up again. And I'm like, damn it, I'm waiting for her to... You know.
Yeah. And so for many people, it will reopen.
Yeah.
Whether it opens at a level that becomes professional or not, it's just part of that soul contract and whatever they're here and they're meant to do. But you are meant to have those life experiences. And I look at, you know, all the moves that I've done over, you know, the last 25 years and all the places I've lived and the people I've met, those all add to kind of like my repertoire or dictionary of what the pets and the people can communicate to me, because the more experiences you have, the wider the breadth of communication and connection is. If you've lived in the same place your whole life, it's not impossible, but it just makes things a little bit more challenging than if you've traveled the world and you've lived in multiple cities.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with, I know we're talking about animals today, but I want to just show how you've been certified.
Yeah.
And that was coming from you doing a...
Yeah, so I'm double blind tested, certified psychic medium. And so I do a lot, and I support a nonprofit organization that is headquartered out of the United States, but it's international. For some of you listening, you might have heard of it. It's called Helping Parents Heal, and it's for parents that have lost children. And it's a beautiful nonprofit organization collectively where parents can come together. There's chapters, there's local chapters in Australia. There's chapters all over the United States, you know, India. I've connected to many of the local groups, and it really is a support haven for the parents that have lost the kids. It's non-denominational, and so there's many mediums that can come in and help support in that way. And there is an opportunity to really also make sure that everyone is aligned with the best interests. And so I went through a certification process that's not connected directly to Helping Parents Heal. But in that certification process, which it was definitely nerve-wracking, I had 5 double-blind readings. And so what that means is I was on a computer screen. The screen was black. I had no information on who the person was. I didn't know if they were going to be male or female as my sitter or my client, and I didn't even know their name. And I was just to connect to them and tell them, and it was all mediumship based, so it wasn't psychic, and I was to connect to them and give them a reading, and I was getting scored. And so you had a point system, and you got scored, and so you did a number of these in case maybe one didn't go well or not. So you did 5, and so not everybody passes. It's definitely not. I wouldn't say it's not an easy thing, but it can definitely kind of rattle your nerves a bit, you know, because you're put on the block and you say to yourself, okay, well, what does this mean? You know, if you don't pass, does this mean I'm not a psychic medium? And it's like, no, I know in truth that I am, but if I want to quantify myself and be certified, and it's through Mark Ireland, amazing man who holds this program of certification, but there's no training. Anybody can go and get into that queue and want to do it, but it's definitely challenging.
I think that's lovely though, because for a lot of people that do sort of think, they're just making it up, or they're just, like I said, reading your body language, to know that someone you're going to has actually been tested, been certified, gone through that, I think that's nice and reassuring. So yeah. I think that's actually really, like, it's really rare. Like, I've been to so many, you know, mediums, clairvoyants and things over the years, and you're the first person that's ever, you know, been certified. I have seen programs on TV, so I know, you know, a little bit about the process and things.
And there's amazing mediums out there, you know, who aren't certified because it's a fairly new thing, but definitely it also allows you on your journey to see the depth that you can go, and you're put into a position where, you know, you don't know anything about the person, which I always work that way, where I don't know until I get onto my Zoom screen. I don't even know the pet's name until I pull up the client information. And
it's so interesting, isn't it? There used to be a show here in Australia, I'm not sure if it was around the world or different versions of, but it was called Sensing Murder.
I was literally just thinking about that show.
Oh, I loved it. Although I used to, so this show called Sensing Murder, what they would do is they would take an unsolved case here in Australia or New Zealand. They would get 2 or three mediums, and they would basically give them an envelope with the person's face in it, and they would literally take them to an airport, put them on a flight. They didn't know where they were going, and they would drop them at an airport, like basically on the other side of the airport, and they'd be like, "Where are we going?" And they'd have a car, and the person would have to direct them in that city. Where are we going? What suburb? What whatever. And so, as an audience, you're watching it, and you're also seeing the double screen of this is how close they are, or this is where the murder was, and this is where they're going. But it was amazing, and a lot of the people would often not open that photograph before they started coming with the information. So what you were saying just then about, having that blank screen, they often always chose that first, and they would say it's a male or a female, and the age and the whatever else. But I was always fascinated about how accurate they were, to the point where you're like, how can you be in a different city?
Introduced me to the whole concept, because I, with my upbringing, naturally skeptical of everything, not just this, just life in general. I was a skeptical person. And Tracey showed me this TV show, and it was mind-blowing. Like some of the stuff that they were coming up with, where they were helping the police to actually solve murders from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And,
And I mean, lots of...
Don't watch that just before you go to bed, which is what we used to do, which totally freaked me out.
Or Home Alone. Don't be home alone watching those things. So it's amazing of just how much information can come, and I think people need to see that really to understand it. Like when you're watching that program, you're seeing that they're not making that up. They're not, So, it's
the biggest thing I would tell people that are watching this and curious about mediumship and psychic and animal communication is, I'm still normal like all of you, and I'm living a very normal life, going to the store, vacuuming, cleaning, all those things. And I happen to have this ability. But the biggest challenge is you have to step out of that. You have to step out of your human story, and you have to drop everything when you're in the power. And that's what's happening is I'm in the power when I'm connecting at a higher vibration, and I'm connecting to the pets at a much, much higher frequency. Whether they're living or deceased, I'm connecting to them soul to soul. And so it can be very challenging when people know something about the pet already, or they know the story, because they don't trust the information that they're getting. So a lot of times I'll tell my students, it's best to come with a blank slate. It's best to come, with a clean mind in the space that you don't know anything about anybody, and then you aren't already thinking, oh, is that right or is that wrong? Because that's what the mind wants to do. The analytical mind will step in and keep. That's the challenge of going back and forth, and that's what really sets apart a really good psychic medium and animal communicator, or someone who just does it a little bit. And it's a learned skill, and it's not a skill that just happens overnight. It's not something that you can rush. It's a spiritual journey, and anybody that's on a spiritual journey or an awakening knows that it truly cannot be rushed, because you have to have these life experiences as they unfold. But we so often in our human selves want to rush it. Let's go to this class. Let's go to that. When can I open up? I got to make money. I got to do this. And that knocks you out of alignment. And the whole work that I do is all about being in alignment. When you're not in alignment, you can't connect at the highest of vibrations, and then you're unable to really deliver, what it is, which is healing hearts.
Yeah.
That was going to be something I wanted to ask is getting onto pets and animals. Why do people come to you? Is there common themes?
I would say I get honestly, it's probably a 50-50 split for pet parents that are both have a pet that's living and deceased. The deceased parents are in a tremendous amount of grief. The grief is incredibly sharp. And so our pets provide unconditional love. They give us a tremendous amount of unconditional love, so much so that unconditional love is very hard to find in a human relationship.
Yeah.
Very, very hard. And so what the pet has taught me and what the animal kingdom has taught me is when they pass on, that's immediately stopped. So that unconditional love that you're feeling from your pet, it hasn't truly stopped, but the physicality of it has. And so the dopamine hit, the oxytocin hit that you're getting isn't there anymore. So you're immediately launched into this deep state of despair and grief, and your body's out of sorts, your nervous system starts getting dysregulated. So you have all of that coupled with just the emotional intensity of the loss of the pet. But a lot of times the parents don't understand why they're feeling. I have so many people that will come to me that say, I didn't realize I was going to be in such a state of grief. I didn't realize how intense it was. I love my partner, but my gosh, I love my dog even more. And, so they're very surprised with that.
I think because your dad, they had an elderly dog, and she had some health issues. So she She actually got put down this month. And because your dad's home with her all the time, you know.
And he wasn't expecting to miss her
it. I
as
think
much
because
as
she
he
had
did.
so many health issues and, you know, she was...
A lot of work.
Yes, she was a lot of work.
We babysat her
Yeah.
for, what?
a couple of weeks. And
It was longer than that. It was like 6 weeks, 8
yeah,
weeks.
she had a lot of quirks. And so she was a lot of work in the end. But yeah, your dad was really upset.
Yeah.
And I don't think he expected
He wasn't
to
expecting
be.
it because for him it was, because she was so much work, it was going to be a relief. But then, you know, when she
Yeah.
left,
And because she was suffering, he wasn't feeling bad that, you know, that she was still here. He thought he would be okay. And yeah, he really wasn't.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for a lot of pet parents, it really starts to test, especially nowadays, because spirituality and people are so much more open, and, you know, consciousness is you know, the vibration is getting higher and higher as a humanity. And so people are having these experiences when their pets pass. They're seeing signs, they're seeing things that they can't understand. It doesn't fit into the book that maybe they grew up with, you know, and that's what I try to explain also. And usually the pets will come through with that is, you know, I'm right there with you as a child growing up. I didn't realize that I could talk to the pets this way. I didn't realize how limitless the soul was. But when you really understand the soul to soul connection, it's limitless. And so it doesn't matter what shape it takes. It doesn't matter if it's in pet form or if it's in human form. It's limitless when it's a soul connection.
Yeah. Do you know, I've been watching Britta's Instagram and social media and things, and some of the things that you've said the animals have communicated to you, which I've found it's fascinating. And actually, I shared this with someone on the podcast the other day. You said when you move house, an animal said to you or told you to get your dirty washing and
Yes.
rub it over the floor and the skirting boards and things like that. So the scent of the owner is in the new house. And I just thought that's genius.
It is genius. And, you know, that's one of the amazing things that I find so fascinating with the pets is they will actually not only just self-diagnose, but they will self-fix themselves. They will tell you what they need to create that comfort in their home and to create that peacefulness and love and joy for the pet parent. And so what you're talking about is exactly that. Our pets can smell, dogs specifically can smell 400 times greater than a human can. 400 times. Yeah. So I never thought about it, but I had this one dog about 18 months ago tell me that it was so agitated in the house because it was just too many scents, and it was overwhelming and it didn't connect with it. And so it wanted it to take its mom and dad's dirty clothes and like rub it all over like the bottom half of the house. And I was like, that's really ingenious. Like that's absolutely, it costs nothing, you know, and most of the time what the pets are always showing me is it costs nothing, what they're providing as a solution. Yeah. And then you say to yourself, well, how can that be? How does the pet know that? Because they're not just a pet. This is just who they are. Yeah, they're a soul. Just in this earthly form, they're in that pet body, but on a soul level, it's truly limitless.
Yeah. Another one of Britta's information that came through was dogs with their bowls. Do you want to talk about the dog bowls?
That's a big one. Yeah. So the dogs love to tell me things that, so the dogs love to tell me things that they really would appreciate the pet owners knowing. And so what I have found collectively is the dogs don't like to look at a solid space when they're eating or when they're drinking their water. And so not all dogs, but a lot of dogs prefer to just be looking at you. And part of that is because you emit this beautiful vibration and frequency. So if you have a dog that currently looks at a solid space or structure, and when they're eating, they're constantly looking back at you, it's because they want to be with you. It's because they want to face you. They want to be in that frequency. And the frequency feels less intense when they're not in that heart coherence. And so a heart coherence is when their heart and your heart is in alignment. And so that's why a lot of times the small dogs, when they get picked up, they love being picked up because they're in that heart coherence. Same thing happens with the big dogs. You know, I'll have big dogs that will show me the pet owners that bend down and talk to them and play with them a lot more when they're on their level versus the owners that are standing up. They're missing that heart coherence when the owner's standing up and they're looking down at them. It doesn't go that way.
That makes sense. It does make sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Something, again, I never had heard of until the pets taught me. So they're my greatest teachers.
Yeah.
Every time I do a reading, they're my greatest teachers. There's always something to learn and become aware of.
Do you think that, because I've heard different things about this, do you think that when you have an animal that soul comes back in other animals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So reincarnation is actually a pretty hot topic, and I tell people only what I've experienced in my sessions, and it has to be with evidence because I'm an evidence-based animal communicator.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the potential is there. If the pet owner wants their loved dog or cat or horse to come back again, the essence of that spirit can absolutely step forward, and the intention is everything. Now, the question becomes, is it the chicken or the egg? So we all have soul contracts, and we made these contracts with our pets before we even came into this lifetime. So you might be thinking that it's a very much a free will choice, but where did that thought come from for you to even set that intention? Well, that thought came from your soul and from your higher self. So it can get very complicated. People think that soul is entirely in the earthly body, and that's not the case. There's just a portion of your soul, because that's where we get into the holographic universe, and we have multiple lifelines and multiple timelines that are happening, and that's like a whole nother, string theory, but it's not a mathematical conjecture. And, I know all of that. I've worked through all that as I've taught on manifestation, and a lot of people don't understand why manifestation works and doesn't, and that's like a whole nother...
That's another episode.
That's another episode.
We should do that episode. That sounds
Yeah, that would be good. Britta can be our monthly guest.
But it all comes down to that intention. And so if you want your pet and the essence of your pet's spirit to come back, they will. How they come back is really the divineness of it. So you might have had a brown dog that passed away, but that pet might come back as a white dog, and it might be a different gender. So people can get really tripped up thinking they want the exact same pet. That's
a carbon copy.
Yeah, and that's a clone. That's very different.
Yeah.
That's not the same spiritual essence in that space.
I have a question on the soul, right? And it probably ties in with reincarnation, and it might be string theory, and which I don't actually know that much about. Is there a time limit? And I know even like time is relative, and time is like potentially a human
Time is a human construct.
So,
that, yes.
So this might be totally confusing, but for like a layman like myself, is there like a certain amount of time that you can communicate with, say, my dad's dog who just crossed over? Or like, is it infinite? Or like, and if there is reincarnation, are they coming back, and how long does that take? And all those sorts of things are sort of mind-bending.
No, absolutely, and really good questions. And so there is no time from a soul perspective. And so we live in this very linear process of past, present, and future. But in the afterlife, in the realm of the soul, it's limitless. And so if you think about it, the way I teach it is you think about an architectural plan, the master plan of building a home. You're going to see all the layers at once. That's how it works with the architect's master plan. But then they don't build the home in all those layers, but they look at it on all those layers. And so when the pets are communicating to me on a soul-to-soul level, they're showing it to me in all the layers at once. And so that's where time can be challenging to differentiate. So when you ask the question, what happens? Can I connect to a pet from, say 40 years ago? Absolutely. Absolutely. That pet can be just as clear today, that passed on 2 hours ago as it was 40 years ago. Now, if you think that pet has reincarnated into another pet that's also living, and say, I get this question asked a lot, what if I predeceased that pet? Or oftentimes I'll even have it in some human sessions, what if I predeceased the loved one that I think has reincarnated? Do I miss the reunion when I pass on? No. It is impossible to miss the reunion. The soul is limitless. And so that is where our human self thinks that we can only be with one person at a time or one pet at a time. It's not that way at all. It's the same thing. I get asked the question about what happens after my spouse passes and I want to get remarried. How does that work when I pass on? And it's not like they get up to heaven and they say, or the afterlife, and they say, okay, well, I'm going to hug you first, then I'm going to hug you, and then I'm going to hug you. It doesn't work that way. And that's where our humanness cannot comprehend, because that's how we operate in this mentality. We operate like, oh, I can only hug one person at once. It's just love. It's an infinite amount of love. And it's just how it works. And so there is no chronological time from the soul perspective, predeceased, deceased, reincarnation, and not.
What do you mean by predeceased? Does that mean you die first?
So predeceased would be that you passed on. So say, for example, so your dog, Jerry passed on 10 years ago, and you feel Jerry came back in a reincarnation with another pet that you have that's only two years old, and say you get diagnosed with a terminal illness and you're going to pass on, and now you're really worried that you're not going to see Jerry in your life reunion when you pass on. That doesn't happen, even if you think that Jerry's essence has come forth in a current pet. And I get that question asked a lot with parents that have lost kids. That may have lost a child in utero or early on to SIDS or something very early on, and they see similarities, or thinking, oh, that the essence of my first child is in this other child. Well, what happens? Do I miss the reunion? And so that was really kind of my first introduction from the spirit realm with reincarnation. And I always tell people, you only know what you know until you pass on. And I will never argue a belief. You know, if you truly believe in something, you should never have to defend it. And so I don't know everything. I only know what I'm taught through the spirit realm and through the higher states of consciousness and soul to soul. But as an evidence-based medium, they have to show me the evidence.
Yeah.
They have to be clear when they're showing me in a communication session, if it is a reincarnation, I have to see it. Like, I'm starting to have pet parents come to me, and the pets are talking about past lives together, and they want to know their past life together. And we're going back into like other lifetimes. So we're talking like Middle Ages, Roman period.
Oh, wow.
You know, we get a bit woo-woo here. And I'm like, well, you got to show me the evidence before I'm going to like, you know, go into that depth. And so the pets they do show up with the evidence specific to something that's happened in this lifetime with the mom or dad. And it's just, it is mind bending. I call it mind blowing, but I like mind bending.
I think you need, like for me, who, you know, really is into and open to spirituality and things, even I need that evidence. Like when I've gone to clairvoyants before and things, and they've told me something, I'm like, you could not have guessed that. Like you just really, you couldn't have plucked that, you know, from nowhere, that was coming from somewhere. And so I just, for me, that evidence is so important. And even, to be honest, I actually, depending on what the client is, but I'll often say to clients, you know, have you ever gone and seen a medium or a clairvoyant, or have you ever gone and, you know, and I'll suggest those things. And the comfort that they can get, you know, from having someone, and that's why the evidence is so important, because if they're telling you something about your now and you can relate to that, and you're like, okay, you're getting stuff, you're understanding, then you have the trust in what you might be saying about something that isn't so evidence-based because it's in the future.
Exactly.
So I just think that evidence is so important. And I've had so many things that are just crazy, like crazy, the stuff that people have told me in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that that's mind blowing. Have you got any stories that jump into your mind about ones that, you know, people were really blown away with in terms of
gosh.
I know you've got loads because I
saw
watch your
one the other day.
Yeah.
Well, it might have been one of your old ones on social media, but it was just about the guy who had the gate at the bottom of the stairs and the dog really disliked.
Oh yes,
Oh,
yes, I watched that one as well.
Yeah. was
Yeah.
there.
And that was so impromptu. I actually had been, I know exactly what you're talking about. That was just a few months ago. And I had actually worked with him on something differently. We were on a Zoom together. I had hired him as like a coach for something on one of my social media channels. And at the end, he was very intrigued and he's like, well, can you tune in to my dog? And I did. And
Oh,
it was
so he wasn't even like a
no,
client, right?
he wasn't even a client. No. And I said, sure. And I said, tell me your dog's name. And he told me the dog's name. And that's all. I need the name, or I need the coloring of the dog. And this was a living dog. And you know, I know what you're talking about only because I can remember that I created the video clip from it. And the dog showed me something about the front of entrance, and he didn't like the front entrance, and it really bothered him. And it had to do with, they had a baby gate up. And so what's interesting, and that's a really great example, and this is where I tell people, it's not like picking up a phone. It's not like having this one-on-one conversation, whether the pet's living or deceased. They show it to me as best as they can. What it ended up being is he had a baby gate at the end of the stairs that literally jutted down into the landing of the little entryway of the home. And that baby gate is what the dog didn't like. And that's why he didn't like that front entrance area.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see the baby gate. You know, I've never had that experience. Do I know what it looks like? Sure. But that's where I try to teach my students, and I try to teach people, if you haven't had that experience, the pets will do the next best thing to really communicate the best way that they can to help you as the pet owner understand. And that's that soul to soul connection. He knew exactly right away what his dog was talking about.
His reaction was
Yeah,
really
it was
cool.
priceless. I know. Yeah.
That's why I like those side by sides that you
Yeah.
you can see that.
Yeah.
And I think with people's beliefs, I think once you've had an experience of anything, whether it's, you know, you've had your own, you know, reading, or whether you've had an experience that, you know, you just can't kind of explain. Once you've experienced that, no one can shake you off that. From my perspective, no one can shake you off that. That, you know, you might just sort of let them fob you off and stuff, but in your mind, you're like, no, I know what I saw, I know what I felt, I know what that was. And that's so comforting. That's so beautiful to have that.
Absolutely. And that's where it goes back to what I teach. And when you truly believe in something, you never have to defend it.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody comes from different walks of life. And we've all had these life experiences that we were born into. You know, as a young child, you don't really get to choose, you know, if you're going to believe in this, you're going to believe in that. You're just a product of the family upbringing. And then many times you go and you peel back the layers and you start to have a different life experience than maybe you were brought up with. And you start to question, is this real? Is it not real? What is this? You know, and that's where the challenge becomes, because the people that you you love and grew with don't necessarily understand. And a lot of times with the pets that have passed on, even your own loved ones, your parents or your siblings that you maybe no longer live with, or even someone you do live with, they cannot understand the grief.
Yes.
And that has become a very big challenge that I've seen in helping these pet parents really understand that I see you, I hear you, and I love you. And it's okay that you're feeling this way and that it's not been validated by other people. And that's very hard to be in a very alone state of grief.
I think that's getting better though, actually, because one of the pet chains, like the vet chain, here in Perth, actually reached out to me wanting to be like a preferred counsellor on their website or something.
That's great.
Yeah. And I thought, well, how lovely that they are wanting to support their clients.
Absolutely.
You know, with that grief, because well, for a lot of people, that's their only companion, that's their baby. Like, you know, there's so many families where, you know, they've got a pet, but if you're on your own, that is like your mum. Like if she didn't have Max, like Max is her baby. Like she adores him.
Yeah.
She just
I mean, I would say the favourite out of the me and my brother and Max, and she'll say that. So
but in her defence, I do say that about Lenny too. I might say he's my favourite child.
Yeah.
And in fact, you get to a certain age where you stop showing the baby photos and now it's all the animal photos come out.
Very true.
But speaking of Lenny, on one of your posts, you were saying about soul contracts, and that as much as people might think, you know, they're going to research and look at the breed and the this and the that, and you know, really do a lot of work, your pup's going to come when your pup's going to come, and it's to do with that soul contract. And for us, it was so interesting because we had lost 2 of our dogs a few years ago, and we missed having animals in the house, but we also were a little bit like, oh, thank goodness we don't have to do, you know, dog sitters, or we don't feel bad about leaving them, you know, if we went out for the day. So we actually enjoyed for a tiny bit of time that break of not being responsible for something. But then the rest of the family, I say the rest of the family because Scott was the only person not on board, because he does all the work for Lenny. So there was a reason. But the rest of us, the other 4 of us, we were all really, really wanting an animal. Anyway, I'd been keeping an eye on different sites, and I knew there's wait lists and things, and we have lots of holidays booked. I'm a little bit of a holiday queen, so I thought, oh, we're going to keep getting these, you know, dogs looked after. It'll be hard. Anyway, so then when everything cancelled with COVID, I was like, right, well, now's our chance, as did everybody else in the world, try and get a pet. But I must have just pipped them at the post, although it was maybe the sole contract. So we ended up getting Lenny from a country town over the other side of the country in Tamworth. It's a country music town. And because there was no flights at the time, someone else that was getting one of the puppies from that litter had to drive Lenny to Sydney, had to put him on a plane for us. In the end, they'd mucked up the flights, I think, because the flights were changing so much around COVID. They had to took him to the airport, took him back home from the airport because the flight wasn't ready, then drove him back the next day. Like, these people were amazing.
Yeah, they were amazing.
But it all just lined up and we got this, you know, little puppy, 6 weeks later. But it was such a random... Like, we had friends looking for dogs at the same time, and we were like, how did we end up with him? I can't believe that with all those wait lists, and that someone had pulled out because of COVID and things. But for me, even the colouring of what he is, he looks very similar to one of my other dogs, and I just know he was meant to be. And his behaviour, he's very similar with his behaviour. He's a different breed. He's actually a different breed, but he's very similar. So that's why I wondered about that reincarnation and things.
And you're exactly right. And when you feel that meant to be, and that's that inner soul feeling, but there's also a flow that goes with it. And you'll find, if you reflect back on your own pets over the years, the ones that just seem to just happenstance come into your life have perhaps a different bond that you're feeling than maybe one that you had to push a little bit more at, you know, because all of our pets definitely have a soul contract, but not all of them are necessarily that soul pup or that soul cat that we might be feeling. And we always kind of have those bigger connections. But I tell my pet moms and dads that it's so important to just stay in flow, and it's just going to unfold for you so effortlessly. You're not going to have to you might go look for the breeder, but you're not going to have to be wrought with a decision. Do I go with this one? Do I not go with this one? I don't have the money. You know, it won't be any of that. It just is in flow because of the intention and that soul contract before either one of you stepped into this earthly world. It was already pre-planned.
Do you know, I follow lots of animal accounts on social media, and often the rescue ones are the ones that I really love. But there's some sort of rescue centre somewhere in the world where they get all the people that want to adopt and they put them in a waiting room and they let the dogs choose.
Yes, I've seen that. I
Isn't
love that idea.
Oh, it makes me cry every time.
Yes.
Because the people, as soon as the dog's chosen them, because the dogs will wander around, then they'll stop in front of somebody. The person they've stopped in front of, like, doesn't matter what that dog looks like. So as much as we might be thinking, I want him to be black or this or that or whatever the colour or breed or whatever, you watch those faces of those people, no matter what breed it is, they are just so touched. They often are in tears. They're so honoured.
Absolutely.
I just think it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that and I thought, what an ingenious idea. And so what's happening is, yes, the soul contract is there, but that frequency match is taking place. And so as much as I've said, like, the dogs can smell 400 times greater, what the pets have taught me in the last 18 months is the frequency that they can feel, and they vibrate with you at that same level. They can sniff that frequency out as great or greater than the sense of smell of food or whatever. And it's mind-blowing to me. And that's because you're in that same energetic field. So even though you stepped in to adopt that pet and you didn't know who you were going to walk home with, there's already that knowing that's taken place on a soul level.
Yeah.
Wow.
So beautiful.
I have another question about souls and stuff. Are animals always, if they are reincarnated, going to come back as animals, or can souls, like, because I wouldn't mind having a crack at being a dog at some point.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so as an evidence-based animal communicator, I only teach on what I know with evidence, and I have never seen with evidence a cross species. So I have never seen a human come back in animal form or an animal go into human form with evidence. I've never seen it. I would say that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I would never argue with somebody if they could show it with evidence, but I've not seen it. Also, what I've not seen is I've never seen a dog come back as a horse. So I've never seen the pets cross into species that way. Again, I personally have not had it evidentially. And so I only operate on evidence in that space. But that doesn't mean down the road, and who knows, maybe next week I'll suddenly have, 5 readings where they're going to start showing me that. But I've not seen that. What I do see, though, is in the pet heaven or the pet afterlife, the pets are best friends with different species. And I can tell you this incredible story. I had this woman come to me a couple years ago, and this was when I was just only doing emailed sessions. And so I don't know who you are. I don't know what you look like. And she sends me this picture of her horse. And she just wants a general communication on the horse that had passed on. And so this horse, bringing me into their heaven, and the first friend that this horse has is a butterfly. Aww. And I'm like, a butterfly? I'm like, with like 1,000-pound horse, and there's this tiny little butterfly? Like, I must be making this up. And sure enough, this horse is running through the fields and the valleys of its afterlife, and this little butterfly is like right up at its withers, and it's following, and it would go up by the head, and it would rest on its back. And I'm like, this is really wild, I don't know, and I'm like, that's its best friend, so send off the recording. And she gets back to me, and she's like, I've been in tears. And she said, this was my childhood horse. I grew up with this horse for 15 years. And when I was a child, I used to always spend my time in the barn, and I used to collect caterpillars, and I would put them in glass jars, and I would watch them metamorphose, and I would release them as butterflies. And my horse,
look at my arm.
Yes.
Gone goosebumpy.
My horse was around these butterflies its whole life.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Isn't that incredible?
Oh, how funny that my arm just went all goose. Look, my leg.
It's a soul knowing, and that's what's happening. It's touching the soul,
wow.
and it's the soul truth. It's the truth chills,
Yeah.
And so
I often get that. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, I love stories. I'm a story girl.
So that was her evidence. That's what I say when it's evidence. It's not like name, rank, and serial number. Tell me the birth date. Tell me the phone number. It's something that you couldn't even expect. And you, as the animal communicator, it's really not for me to have to know the ins and outs. I just have to trust.
Yes.
And that's the difference. And that's why the pets just keep coming to me, and they come to me so strongly. I mean, every day I've got emails from clients, can I come in sooner? You're booked out. What can I do? How can I get in? And the pets just keep showing up. And so I've built that bond with the animal kingdom as much as I have with the spirit world. And so there's a level of trust. It really comes down to a level of trust.
Yeah.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss. We're quite a way into the show, and we haven't talked about Lenny, other than potentially reincarnation. We've had a few pet people, like dog trainers, come because he goes nuts when
To anybody,
to
us,
anybody,
to
including us,
randoms.
and Tracey probably the most. So when we
Is
walk
it?
into the house,
You think it's me the most?
yeah. So that one, I guess, is love and excitement. I'm so happy to see you. I can't control it, but it will be anyone who comes to the
So
door.
like goes barking nuts or
Yes.
Barking, jumping.
barking, and it won't stop. And it'll go on for...
And he'll back chat. You'll put him in his bed and tell him that's enough, and then he'll keep coming out again, barking at you.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, what are you trying to tell me? Is it literally just he's flooded with all of these emotions and he doesn't know what to do? Or, and we've tried all sorts of tricks to settle him down, but nothing works.
Yeah, so barking is definitely a challenge for many pet owners with the pets, and every pet does have a unique situation. But I look at it as like a three-prong approach. So I look at it holistically, and you've got to look at what's going on with the pet, what's going on with the home, and what's going on with the owners. And so overarchingly, in the home environment, you want to air it out. If you haven't opened up your doors and windows recently, you want to air it out, because while energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it sits around. And so think about, the last time you had a family gathering or a party, and all these people came over and they had this jolly good time and everything was great, but they leave and they've left their energy behind. And so that energy doesn't go anywhere. It can only dissipate. And so our pets, especially the dogs, are incredibly sensitive to energy. And so you might see a shift in your pet's behavior just from that. So what do you do after a party or a remodel, or every time I've moved, I wait until the movers leave and I air out the house and everything. You want to open up the doors and windows. You can absolutely sage, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to do it, but if you do, you want the doors and windows open. So you want the energy to dissipate. So that kind of calms the space down initially. Now, if you are a chaotic family or high vibration
Yes.
I would
going
say
on,
yes, definitely.
then there's probably needs to be an air out every day. When I lived in Switzerland,
we
the Swiss do it every day, even in the winter for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And it became an amazing thing to do, because you are bringing in that fresh air even in the winter. And so the pets have also taught me how important that is for themselves. And even for you, you don't realize how intense it is. And you know what it's like when you walk into, say, a doctor's office or, a work environment or a party. You can feel the energy right away.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that first need of airing it out. Then you got to look at the pet. And so that's when it becomes like a more one-on-one session. And that's where the pet will show me what's taken place. I can give you one example off the top of my head that I've had in the past. I had a dog show me that every time somebody came to the door, it went nuts. And it showed me that it was because when it was born, when it was in its litter mates, every time someone would come to the door, they would come in and they would pick one of the pups out, and the pup would leave and never come back. So this dog grew up thinking every time somebody was going to come to the door, they were going to be
Someone's
taken
gonna
away.
go.
Yeah. And even that was just mind blowing to me, because you think it doesn't have an impact. You think as a puppy, that little, weeks old, they're not going to remember, but it actually does have an impact on a soul level. So what's the solution to that? Doesn't cost anything. It's having the conversation with the pet. It's having the conversation and validating for them and letting them know, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that with Britta. Thank you so much. And you're not going anywhere. This is your forever home, so you're validating that for them and you're letting them know. And even though you've probably told them you love them and everything, it's that sense of validation. So those are the first two things. So the third thing is the pet owner, which also comes into more of a one-on-one session, and the pet owner obviously sometimes also has something going on. So it's not necessarily at the same level as maybe, the home or the pet, they can all be in varying degrees, but all of those three make up 100%. They make up the whole. So if you're only focusing on one and not the other two, you're not going to get a solid change or a change with long-term for that pet. You might get a short amount of change where suddenly they're not barking, but not long-term. So then we start to look at, and this is what's really cool, when I do my soul-to-soul connections, I'm not a telepathic animal communicator. I'm a soul-to-soul animal communicator. And so the pets are going to show me on a soul level what's going on with you. They're going to talk to me and they're going to show me why are they reacting the way that they're reacting. And oftentimes there's something going on a soul level from you, something that wasn't healed, something that isn't being seen that you're not realizing on a human level. So it could be something like you don't feel like you get heard very much in your life personally, and your dog is taking that on and speaking out. And so they're speaking out on a vibrational way of barking, and the dog will give me some specific examples of what that is in your life, and the pet owner will say, oh my gosh, That's so true. And a lot of times they'll talk to me about your relationship with your mom or your dad, and they'll tell me where the healing needs to take place. And it's truly mind bending and mind blowing in that. So that's what I would say from a 3-prong approach. It's really 3 pieces, but also the pets are very sensitive to the frequency. And so your dog knows before you even turn the corner to drive home that you're already close by. They can already sense the frequency shift. You share the same energetic field.
They've done studies on this about dogs waiting for their owners, and they've because obviously people might think, oh, it's just because it's 5 o'clock or just because it's whatever time the person gets home, but they've actually put cameras in the homes, and they've seen the dog has only gone to the window when the person's left the office. Like it was that intentionality,
Absolutely.
in terms of that thought that the dog picked up on. That stuff blows my mind when I hear things.
It's
like
real.
That.
It's real. But again, even me, I didn't even understand it even 5 years ago. So it's every time I have those sessions with the pets, you learn more and more. I have taken no classes. I have read no books. As far as the animal communication goes, it has all been self-taught through the pets, but it's been phenomenal. And it's exactly that. You're in the same energetic field. And so they sense it, they see it, they understand it. So what does that mean for you? You can talk to them. You can talk to them when you're on your way home. You don't have to verbalize it. You can talk to them in a nonverbal way. Think about it as picking up the cell phone. You pick up your cell phone all the time to talk to your friends. Why are you not talking to your dog or cat or your horse?
Yeah. Do you know, speaking about talking to them, I was watching one of my animal videos, and it was talking about actually I think it was just a picture, and it was a write-up of it, so I read the article, and it was saying this judge had this terrible animal abuse case in his courtroom, and because of the severity of the case, he actually felt compelled to go down to the shelter and actually meet the dog that was in question. And they said, oh look, you're not going to get much out of him, he kind of just sits in the corner and doesn't even look up. We've tried to give him comfort and pat him and things like that, he's not interested. So the judge just went in there and he started quietly talking to him, and he told him that someone's taken his story seriously and that person's in trouble and he's safe now, and really just talked to the animal in this beautiful way. And they said the dog looked up and actually moved towards the judge and put his head on his leg, and the judge kept visiting him every week until he recovered, because he was very damaged. And the dog actually went home with the judge. He adopted him in the end. So again, that soul contract that you were talking about, but even the fact that the dog responded when he heard those words, when all the other volunteers that were trying to work with that dog were obviously being kind and loving and whatever, but it was hearing that we got you. We heard you.
They want to be validated, they want to. And as they have unconditional love for us in this human form, they still can strive and do so much better and live a very joyful, happy life when they understand that validation and they feel it in that space. But a dog doesn't remember in that sense. They'll remember some of the trauma, like, potentially at the door with the barking or thinking they're going to be taken away, but it's not like they hold resentment to the owners.
They're more present, aren't they? They're more in the moment.
Absolutely in the moment. Yeah. But the trauma does live in the body, as you and I know, with breath work and everything, it does live in the body. And that's what the pets have also shown me in that space. And it lives in the body of the owners too. That's what's incredible. I mean, there's absolutely a really great story. I had this reading, it was probably about a month ago, with this woman. This was a rescue dog, and the dog was telling me that it was scared of the dark. And I was like, well, isn't that interesting? I don't think I've really ever had someone show me with evidence that they're scared of the dark. And so the dog is showing me, before it came to this woman, it was in a shed, and it had been in this shed for a couple of days, and it had been forgotten about. So at that point, I knew that it was some kind of rescue situation. And it showed me that it wasn't like it was intentionally left there, but it was left there. And so for 3 days, it was like pure blackness, and it was scared of the dark. And all it wanted was lights to be put on at night in the hallway, like little night lights or whatever. I don't know what you call them here. Do you call them night lights here?
Yeah.
So I said, well, this is really interesting. And I said, well, show me more. Show me something about your mom that could really validate what you're sharing with me right now. Because the mom can't validate the adoption story, right? The mom wasn't part of that dog's life with the adoption. So the dog says to me, I kid you not, the dog says, when my mom was 9 years old, she went to a haunted house and she got so scared she will never step foot in another haunted house again.
Oh, wow.
And the woman just lost it. She said, oh my gosh, how does my dog know this? And she says, I only just adopted him 5 weeks ago. How does he know about my haunted house when I was 9 years old? And I said,
Wow.
because it's a soul to soul connection. And that's what your pet's doing. Your pet is connecting on a soul to soul level. And so while you are thinking that your pet isn't aware of this earthly experience at 9 years old, at a soul level, absolutely. And so that was without a doubt. She understood. It validated everything. It validated things that you can't normally validate, which are pet heaven, adoption stories, those kind of things.
Yeah. Wow. You were saying before about the animals taking on the energy, like, from the house and things. But I've also heard that if someone's ill, it can also kind of take on that illness, or it can transmute it in some way by taking it on. Like, what do you know about those sort of things?
So the pets will definitely take on our emotions. And so how we get ill is we're out of alignment. And so when people get sick at varying degrees, there's misalignment happening in the body, but it's also happening in the emotional level, of the emotional field of that person having that human experience. And so when it becomes too much, the pet will take on those emotions. And if the pet doesn't have the ability to ground or release those emotions, eventually illness will start showing up in the pet. It doesn't have to be in the exact same way, but oftentimes I do see it very similar. I do see the pet well, actually, are you ready for another story?
I love stories.
This is really good.
This is my favorite.
This was on a TikTok live 2 weeks ago. So if anyone's been on my TikTok lives, there are no photos. I'm just chatting with the person, and I had a gentleman say he wanted me to connect to his deceased horse. Paris was the name. And the horse came through amazingly and was showing me its personality. The dad could take all of this, and this is all happening on my TikTok live. And he says to me, can my horse, and the horse did already say to me, it was a very, very sudden passing. And the dad says, can my horse tell you what happened? I don't know what happened. I want to understand what happened. And so the horse kept bringing me to the abdominal region. And many people that are horse owners know about colic. And I'm asking the horse, was it colic? And it kept saying, no, no, no. It kept giving me the word embolism. And I'm like, are you sure it's not colic? And the horse is like, it's not colic. And I said, okay, you need to show me something really specific about dad, anything. The horse says to me, when my dad was younger, he too had a really big issue in his stomach, abdominal area. And I'm trying to have the horse explain it to me. So I'm explaining all of this in nanoseconds. It's happening in nanoseconds in my mind.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm explaining it to this dad. And I said, or to the pet dad. And I said, I think it was your appendix. I said, I'm not sure. I said, I've never had my appendix out, so I don't know what that feels like. I said, it could be the gallbladder. I said, there's something going on in that space. And he says, oh my gosh. He says, when I was 12 years old, he said, I burned the lining of my stomach in a spicy chicken wing contest. And he needed medical attention.
Wow.
That's hilarious.
So he didn't have the horse at 12 years old,
Yeah.
but the horse just tuned into something that was so eerily similar but different, to validate. And I didn't want to put the dad on this like wild goose chase of like telling him something about the horse that he thinks that's the way the horse died, and they didn't really die.
Yeah.
So that's where the evidence as an animal communicator comes in.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How do you go with when it is potentially time to put a pet down? Do the pets know? Like, do they sense it? Do they want it?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I get asked that a lot from the pet owners. A lot of pet owners will come to me wanting the validation, is it time to put their pet down? Mm-hmm. I'll be the first one to tell you, only on a soul level, and you will know on a soul level. I don't have the authority to say, yes, it's time to put the pet down or not, but I can tell you what the pet is feeling, and I can tell you where the pet is at currently in their state of mind. On a soul level, the pet absolutely knows. There's that soul-to-soul connection and that communication, but their earthly body might be expressing it differently. And so if you have a pet that you know is showing signs of pain or discomfort, and you're even asking that question, your soul is starting to rise up to your human story. But your human story is feeling guilty. Your human story possibly doesn't want to play God, as I hear some people say, am I going to put my pet down too soon? Maybe they should stay on longer, and am I going to hurt my pet? I can tell you the pets have no memory. And they have taught me that they step into your life to be their mom or dad their entire life. And that includes the end of life. That includes you advocating for them for the best of life transition to their afterlife. And no pet parent truly wants their pets to suffer. And so that's the approach that I take with the pet owners, is it really comes down to the advocacy, and you know your pet better than anybody else. You know your pet better than the vet, honestly, you know? And so some pet owners will go to multiple vets and they might not get the answer that they're looking for, and they're looking for the validation to put the pet down. A lot of times you won't get that validation. Why? Because it's a lesson. It's a soul experience that you're meant to have for you alone to come to that decision that it's time for you to help your pet cross the rainbow bridge. But we oftentimes as humans want to be validated. We don't want to take that on. And so the pets some of the pets have shown me that they stay on living until you've made that decision. You know, it has to come from you, and you'll go round and round in circles. But know that your pet loves you and adores you. I've never, ever, ever had a pet ever be upset with the ending. You might see the body breaking down. You might see some discomfort and some pain, but that's the body. The pet's soul is already playing between two worlds. They've shown me that evidentially.
I do have a question that is very Tracey and Scott specific. Tracey has said how often she watches these rescue videos on social media. I would say you're putting a good solid few hours in per day.
Wow.
They make me,
I didn't know that.
They make me smile so much. I love them. I just, I make smile. They make me cry too. But my heart is so full by watching them.
Yeah.
So how, I'm trying to work out in my mind, and again, it's hard to. So a lot of these animals, because the reason I'm asking is I think at some point, I don't know when, but Tracey will have us fostering dogs.
Slash adopting.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're empty nesters.
I hope so. I hope she waits that long.
We're going to be foster fails, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So like, what's the deal with, say, like a dog who has a very rough start to life, and then, you know, gets into the adoption system, and then maybe has a foster parent, and and Tracey makes me watch a lot of these stories, and they're amazing. And the people who do these rescues, but then they then give the dog to a family.
Yeah.
So how does the soul contract work with all that?
It's almost like this amazing mystere way. You know, it's almost like saying, how can the God source or God or your God power, whatever you call your higher being, help plan that out? And it just is. And so the pet that went to that first owner that had abuse, that was not meant to happen in an abusive way. And so what I try to tell people, you know, and this can be very debatable in the spiritual community, I have never been shown with evidence, nor do I believe that anyone comes to this earth to harm another person or pet. That is free will gone awry.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, free will gone awry. We come here to experience certain emotions. And those emotions sometimes can get the best of somebody, and then they act out in that free will gone awry in a very negative way, whether it's with a pet, sadly, or if it's with another human. But they were not predestined necessarily to have that experience. Now, if you take, for example, you could talk about it for hours. If you have a pet that comes to somebody and the free will's gone awry and they're neglecting that pet, it may have always been this soul contract that they were only going to be with the pet for a short amount of time, but it may not have been through that way of neglect. Maybe it was going to be they were going to move residence, and then the pet was going to move on to the next person.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can explain it, because when you get the pet from a rescued situation, or maybe you adopt a senior dog, you know, a dog that only has a couple more years, or a cat that has a couple more years, it takes a very special person to take in a pet at that level. Those pets chose you. They chose you to help walk them home.
Yeah.
It's literally to help walk them home. And there was a soul contract in that. So there's always, and I don't even like to use the word lesson, because lesson has such a negative connotation, but it's really a life experience. And we're all here having these life experiences. And so every person that pet touches was set up to have a life experience. So when that pet passes on, and when that person passes on, if they had, you know, put their pet up for adoption, you know, 20 years ago, they're going to still see that pet. You know, that will happen in the reunion if taking place. And that's where everything is all interconnected. And that's where it can just become really kind of mind-boggling in that way. But you have your pets come to you for a very finite amount of time. And when they come to you, there's a very specific reason. It's a reason that sometimes you don't even understand. You might think you're getting them to be excited and have joy with them. And of course there's going to be joy, but there's a bigger reason at play.
Do you know, I 100% agree, because again, back to my videos, so many of those videos when someone's rescued something, it's often been that animal has just gotten in their car or just come to their feet, or in some way have come into a situation where they're like, I cannot leave you. And then through the course of that video, it'll show their own development. They'll say, it's made me more outgoing, or it's made me feel like I'm, not lonely anymore, whatever the reason is. But you can truly see the shift and change in that person by having that animal. And I love it when it's like a random, I don't know, there's a duck that's come along and they've loved that duck from an egg, and all of a sudden this duck follows them around like a mama bear. It's just...
You saw a donkey who lived in a house.
I've seen camels that have been raised as from a baby, and the camels see their owners as being, the mum and dad, and will like cry for them if they go in their house, and they lay on them. Oh, see that? You see why I watch them? There's so many.
She spends her time.
Well,
It's a lot of hammock time.
I could be scrolling on,
That's true.
negative
You could be
things.
doom scrolling.
Instead
What's
I'm
the
just
opposite
like,
of doom scrolling? Hope scrolling.
yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. I am a hope scroller.
What do you do in situations where you hear something that maybe the owner, it's not painting them in a positive light, or it's something that you might have to have a difficult conversation with the owner? Are they tricky situations to navigate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I rarely see an abusive owner coming to me. And I think that's because energetically, they're not in this higher vibration of wanting to better the life of their pet or themselves. Yeah. So that's very rare. But what I do see that does become a difficult conversation is when the pet is sick. And when that pet is sick, there is a direct reflection of something going on in the pet owner's life.
Wow.
So you have to name that?
The pet will name it.
Yeah.
It's the pet will show me, and that can be challenging. And so, like, I'll give you an example. I had a woman a couple months ago. She came to me. She had a cat that just had taken all its fur off of it, and she couldn't understand for the last couple of years why the cat was constantly pulling its fur out. And we go through this whole personal conversation one-on-one, what was happening with this cat, and what was happening with the mom, and the deep-rooted anxiety that this woman had, incredibly deep-rooted anxiety. And that was directly reflected on the cat. And so what was fascinating, though, was as the session was ending, she says, oh, can you tune into my other cat? She gives me, I think the cat's name was like Seamus or Sebastian or something. And I said, sure. I said, let me just see. And I didn't know anything about this cat. And I said, he's got this going on in his stomach. And she said, yeah, he's got kidney issues. And I said, yeah. And I said, oh, and he's telling me it's tied to dad. And dad suffers gout. And she said, he does. How do you know that? And I said, because the cat's telling me. And I said, and the cat's telling me that the gout won't go away until the dad heals his wounding with his father and his relationship with his father. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she said, yeah, my husband's had a challenge with his dad his whole life. So that's what happens. So that's that soul to soul communication. And that's truly, this is not telepathic animal communication. So you come to me for a soul to soul connection, you're going to get a soul answer. You're not going to get, oh, let me go put the pet on this cream, or let me go put the pet on this food. That is a temporary fix. That is a Band-Aid. It is a Band-Aid. It will work for some time, and it absolutely is needed, 100%. Vets are needed. Medication is needed so that pet is not in pain. But to get to the root, so that pet doesn't keep plucking their fur out, or the dad doesn't keep having the gout and the cat can have its kidney issue solved, you got to get to the root.
Man, so it's like basically saying, owners, sort your shit out, or your animals are going to suffer perhaps.
But we don't intentionally mean for them to suffer. And that's the fine line. Yeah. It's the fine line. And that's, again, we're here to have that soul experience. We're here having that human experience. And so, are you going to tell somebody who's, beat up in life, X, Y, or Z, the pet's telling me no, but how do I differentiate that? I don't. The pet does. Yeah. Your pet knows exactly where to meet you, where your soul is at. So if you're not ready to hear something, your pet's not going to talk about it. Your pet knows the barometer of you and where you're at and what you need to hear. So I am just the telephone operator. Yeah. I don't hold anything back. I tell people, I share with you everything that I see, hear, and feel. You're going to get everything from me. You've got to sort it out. But the pet knows. They know what the owner is ready to handle and what they're not ready to handle. I've had sessions where, I mean, the majority of my sessions, especially for the deceased pets, I don't have a deceased human coming into the reading. You know, I have a very separate, you know, session of mediumship that people can come if they want that. And a lot of the pet owners don't cross over. You know, that they'll come, they're fine coming to talk to their deceased pet, but oh, you want to go talk about dad or mom? I'm not sure if I believe in that. It's the same thing.
That's so funny.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So I literally am dealing with two almost like complete separate businesses at times, different clients. But what I'm finding is it's starting to ebb over. So the pet owners, like I had this gentleman come to me a couple months ago. He said, yeah, you gave me a reading on my dog, an email reading, and it blew my mind. And now I've got this life issue. And so I came to you for a psychic session. And I'm like, well done, you know, well done to the pet for that, you know. So that's the soul opening, but that's where the pets know exactly where to meet you at.
Yeah. And I think that for that owner, you would have been so accurate in what you gave about the pet. He's like, oh, well, that's the validation. And, you know, you can help me for me personally. Yeah, I love that. I think that's just so special. Now, going back to, you know, you as with your gifts and things, as you were coming, you know, through and sharing more of your gifts and people knowing that what you do you get people coming up to you at parties wanting to know information, or people saying, do you tune into me? Because I find that even with, if you're a dentist, people are going to say, hey, can you check my tooth, or can you tell me what's going on with this? Or, you know, if you're a lawyer, like whatever the profession is, someone's going to feel like.
Yeah, I think it's more fluid with the pet communication than with the human communication, because a lot of people don't want to be tuned into, and they think like I'm walking around with this like radar and like, you know, seeing you with x-ray vision. Yeah. Yes, I have a sixth sense. Yes, I know, and my guides will tell me if I'm not meant to talk to that person, or I need to be aware, I need to stay away. Like I'm definitely highly, highly tuned into that. But you are too. You know, you would know something feels off. I'm not supposed to, you know,
and people
connect.
say that. Yeah, people can really tune into
So
that.
I'm not going to like walk up to you and be like, oh, here's your name, rank, and serial number. You're going to get a new job next week, because unless you're inviting me in on an energetic level, it's not my place. You may not even believe in this stuff. So I've had for many years, you know, especially with my kids getting older and growing up and living in different countries, you know, people would say, oh, you know, what do you do? And, you know, I don't hide behind it. I did very, very early on, and I don't. I live a very authentic life, and I'll tell them, you know, I'm a psychic medium and an animal communicator, and one of two things will happen. They'll engage with that, or they'll start talking about the weather or something about the kids. And right away I know that that's okay, you know, because I don't need to, you know, explain to them, and wherever they're at in their system and their belief is fine. However, with the pets, it is different. You know, I'm hosting a one-day workshop on March 7th at Crystal Clarity in Clarkson. And just yesterday, I was in the shop, just kind of finalizing some details. And one of the women in the shop was like, oh my God, you're an animal communicator, you know, and she pulled up a picture of her pet, and she's like, can you show me, da, 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 da. And so I just gave a mini reading. I think I went through 3 of her pets just on photo really, really fast. And her mind was like blown away. So yes, it happens, and it's happening more and more for me. And I did have a very unique story. I guess I'll do this really quick. I was in transit a couple weeks ago, flying from Singapore to Europe, and I was at the Singapore lounge, and there was a gentleman sitting across from me, and we just started chatting. I don't know what we were chatting about, but it had nothing to do with my work or anything of that sort. And suddenly I had his cat. I had his cat right there in my mind, and I heard the name Benny. I said, you have a cat. And I said, and I'm hearing the name Benny. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, but my cat's name is Berlin, but that is really close, you know? And so this is where I can tell you, I'm not exact all the time. I go with whatever I'm hearing. Why did the cat not tell me, why did the cat not tell me Berlin and they told me Benny? I don't know. I still sort through that after a decade. So I went on to give him a mini reading, and we went on and had this whole sidebar conversation. And afterwards he said, I've never been to an animal communicator, and his mind was blown away at the evidence that came through. So there was a reason why I was meant to sit in the lounge at that spot at that time to connect to him with his cat and give the messaging that came through. And who knows, maybe that puts him on a different path in life. Maybe it up levels him. Maybe it probably made him think about it. He was heading off to New York, so he had 18 hours to think about his little session with Berlin, but that's where I had to trust, because I'm not going to be the person that walks into the ice cream shop or the coffee shop and say, hey, I've got your dog here or your cat here. You need to do X, Y, or Z, because it's got to be invited in that space. But I do trust in that way, the way the cat came to me. And I was already having a conversation with him. And I said, well, I see a gray cat. And he's like, yeah, my cat's gray. I'm hearing the name Benny. It's Berlin. that's really close.
Yeah.
You know, and it really was when you think about the millions
of
of
all
names
the
possible.
names in the world. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we had a beautiful conversation.
How
that's
lovely.
awesome. Well, you mentioned you're doing a workshop because it's probably time to wrap up. We've been
Yeah.
going for quite a while. Tell us about that, and then we've talked about your TikTok a bit, so I think we definitely have to let people know where they can find you on
Absolutely.
social media and the sort of stuff that you share.
Yeah. So I usually don't do in-person things. I teach everything online. I'm an international global, psychic medium and animal communicator. So I'm doing a 1-day workshop in Clarkson at Crystal Clarity, and they have a great space, and it's for anybody that wants to better connect to their pets, whether they're living or deceased. I'm going to help support you. It's a beginner class. You don't have to come with any experience. And I tell people, you invest in all these things with your pets. You invest in grooming, you invest in fancy dog treats, doggy daycare. When's the last
Clothes,
time?
people with clothes.
Yeah. But when's the last time that you've actually taken time and money for yourself to invest in your relationship with your pet? This goes beyond behavioral. I'm not a behavioralist. I'm not going to teach you how to make the dog sit or stand or the cat use the litter box, but I'm going to help support you in you making that connection with your pets and learning how to make it with other people's pets. So great opportunity. All the details are on my website.
And what's the website?
So my website is my name. It's brittagrubin.com. And you can go on there and you can find out all the details about the workshop. I've got online classes and the retreats, and I'm constantly updating. You can get my sessions on there. My one-on-one sessions are on there. And if you don't see, a time or an opportunity, that's the tough part. There's only one of me. There's no way to hire somebody to do more of my work. And so I do have a queue right now. I'm definitely booking almost 4 months out for some of my animal sessions. And yeah, it's hard. It's you do what you can and as much as you can in making that breath. But I definitely, what I do, I can tell you, and I can tell your viewers, is I do look at my calendar week by week. And so while I'm booked out right now, nearly 4 months, I'll look at the week ahead. And if I have the next day, if I have openings, I'll put them in. I'm working tomorrow and I wasn't normally scheduled to work tomorrow. And so I just opened up the calendar 2 days ago and they got booked out in a day.
Of course I do. People are snapping them up.
So it just happens to be, that just happens at times. I don't hold a wait list. I don't have I don't have the time or logistics to do that. And so somebody can, if they make an appointment and it's 4 months out and they go back and they see a new one opening up, they can switch it on their own. They can reschedule that on their own, but everything has to be automated because I'm so busy with my normal human life too.
Yes. And 3 children.
3 children. I've got 3 kids. And
Yes.
as anybody that knows that has kids, it's very busy and the kids love it. It's been great. It's been a great opportunity and they love hearing the stories about the pets and a beautiful bond.
Yes. So I would say follow Britta on social media because all of her videos are so interesting. I've learned so much about, the animal communication stuff. And in fact, the dog bowls and things, luckily for Lenny, he was already in a different spot. We didn't put him against
so
the
you
wall.
can find me on Instagram
Yeah.
and also on TikTok. And that's pretty much it. My Facebook doesn't really have much going on with it at the moment. It's so hard to manage, multiple lines of.
And is that just your name?
So it's just my name. It's Medium Britta, I think, under the TikTok channel. But if you just look up Britta Grubin, there's a lot of fake accounts. Look for the one that has 19,000 followers.
Wow.
Fake accounts.
Oh my gosh, I have people emailing me every day, sending me messages that they're being requested on money. Yeah.
Oh my God. We're not big enough for fake accounts.
Sort of wait to get to that
We're
level.
fine.
I think the last time I checked, I think there were 7 or 8. So look for the one that has the most followers. I think I'm right around 19,000 followers right now, which is great.
It shows you've made it if you've got some copycats out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Or Instagram too. So I'm on Instagram. But thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Been beautiful.
Absolute
yeah.
pleasure. So I'll make sure that we've got links in the show description of the website and social media so people can find you.
Super.
And we will have Britta on the podcast again talking about mediumship and working with humans.
Absolutely.
But today was just about the animals.
Yeah. I want to do some reading on string theory and all that sort of stuff. We could go deep on the next one. That would be awesome.
Well, and it's always interesting because, again, I go where spirit takes me and I go where my soul takes me. So you could read every book in the world on manifestation or animal communication or psychic mediumship, but until you actually have that experience or until you're actually in it and you can see it and understand it, it's very hard to teach on it. And I tell people, go to as many teachers as you want to go. You'll start to see through them immediately and you'll know who's actually walking the talk and who's actually living that life and of authenticity and working through, I'm not a perfect, I'm human too, which is why I don't get the names right. I tell people I'm like 40%, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. But what an interesting topic. We have never discussed anything like that before. So
Publicly.
Come and spend a day at our house.
I discuss
and
things like that all the time.
quite a bit about it.
Hence why I was so excited to have Britta as a friend.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I thought we'll have Britta hang around for the outro because we usually talk about what we've got coming up. And one of the things that we've got coming up is the breathwork journey on, I've got to get this date right, March 7. Is that
it
a
the same
Sunday?
day?
Same day. Super cool. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's okay.
There's a clash.
Yeah.
crazy.
No, it's not a
Yeah.
clash. It's it's
Choose
meant
one.
to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's at the Raw Space. So if you want to find information on that, there's a couple of ways to do it. One is hop on our mailing list, which is on the website at it's just traceyquayle.com, or follow us on social media, which is at traceyquayle.therapy. Now, you've both done the breathwork journey training, and I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask you, may as well do it in the outro, is why did you do it, and how does it relate to what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Tracey and I were both trained by Neelam Taylor, the facilitator that we were trained by. And I went to my very first retreat experience in 2023 and unexpectedly didn't know Neelam was one of the facilitators there. That I didn't go to a breathwork retreat. And so I had my first experience like unexpectedly, and I was totally blown away by what the breathwork could do. And I became very interested in it and realized it was a real opportunity for me to add another tool to my tool chest. And I really wanted to get into the retreat space. And I wanted to be able to also offer other things when I do retreats across the world that isn't just psychic mediumship. How else can I help support the pet mom or dad or a parent who's lost a child? And so I look at life with different modalities, and those modalities all work in unison in different ways. And so that's how I started with the breath work. And it's really transformative. And I've learned a lot about how grief is stored in the body. So I'm also certified. I'm a certified grief support specialist. I took my certification out of the University of Wisconsin, Madison. And so I have found that the breath work is really one of the most incredible ways to allow the body to regulate and release the trauma. And I've had many clients who will say to me, I've been in talk therapy for a number of years and I don't understand. And one mediumship session, it's life-changing. One breathwork session, they get a touch of it. Does it fix everything? No, because life is part of a puzzle.
It's an
It is
unlayering. Yeah.
That's a great way to use it. It is an unlayering. That's absolutely what it is. So, and that's how we met, in March.
And it was so meant
last
to
year.
be. Like, I think you were kind of at the last minute that you were, jumping on.
Totally.
By that point, Britta was already trained. She was coming for the actual, because it's very much your own work when you're doing the training. So you were doing your own unlayering.
Yeah.
And straight away we clicked, and she was my karaoke buddy.
Yes.
So
Karaoke. That was fun.
yeah. Funny enough, it was fun because
Yeah.
at the very beginning I thought, oh God, that was going to be a nightmare. But as soon as we buddied up, it made it so much more fun. And
So that breath work couples really well when I'm, working and supporting a client, so I can give them a spiritual standpoint and I can show them mediumistically, holistically with the pet or the deceased loved one, or even on a psychic level, but that doesn't fully release the trauma that is layered in the body. So the spirit will tell me where the trauma is coming from. So like that example with the guy, it will tell me, until dad releases his pain with his father's relationship, the gout's never going to go away. The gout's never going to go away till that happens. And now I'm not going to heal as the cat until my dad's gout goes away. So the dad can hear all of that and he can say he wants to fix it. But how you really fix it, you're either going to sit in a looping pattern for years, or you're going to fall upon your podcast, hear this, and say, wow, breathwork is transforming. And you're offering something on March 7th where people can start that.
And the other thing I'll just quickly say, I know we're going to another tangent, but Britta also refers loads of the clients that she sees, for her readings to EMDR, like through me.
Yeah.
So
we still need to do an episode.
We will
about
do an
EMDR.
episode on EMDR, but so I've been seeing some of your clients, and I get to hear some of your stories a little bit, about how accurate you are with your readings and things, because
that's nice.
I've seen them after that. But that's another way that you have told me that Spirit tells you.
Spirit tells
if
me
they need EMDR.
Exactly. Yep. I have a Rolodex of people when Spirit support, shares things. And so when I'm showing EMDR, yeah, it's amazing because my clients are global. So my clients are not based out of Western Australia. They are all over the world, and they want someone that can help support them on an online environment because that's how they've met me. And a lot of people want to have that in the privacy of their home. And so they love doing breathwork online. They love doing EMDR online, and both of those modalities are absolutely worth it. And they all can help with the unlayering. There isn't one modality that does everything. And that's why I
agree.
Yeah. I try to teach on like it's the wheel of life. It's that bicycle wheel. And when the wheel is not moving forward, you got to look at all the spokes. Mediumship is just one spoke. EMDR is just one spoke. Breathwork is one spoke. And so, but if your wheel is stagnant and stuck, pull a spoke off, put another one in. That could just be exercise. There's so many things, but people just, it's sad. People loop, the self-help industry is doubling. It's expected to be $80 billion by 2030. 80 billion.
I can't even get my head around.
I have no fear for my job, put it that way.
Yeah. Actually, I think I'm wrong. I think it's 80 trillion.
Yeah.
I think it's even more than that.
Oh my God.
But it's at 43 right now. So I think it's 80 trillion. It's 40, something like that.
Crazy.
So
now I need to go look it up.
Our show is not the show where we have to justify facts. We just say
We just say them.
All right.
it's roughly,
it's a roundabout.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a really good show.
Yes.
Thank you again, Britta.
Yes, and again, we'll have her back on. So this is just the start.
Definitely have you back.
And Britta and I also want to do something in the future together, like some sort of retreat or some sort of program or something, because we made that plan when we were in our retreat in Bali last year.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well done, everybody.
Thank you.
If you like the show, if you're watching on YouTube, like it, subscribe. And if you're watching on Spotify, rate the show. Like, it takes 2 seconds, rate it 5 stars, and that really helps us out.
And just to let you know, we do have a relationship retreat coming up, in March. We do have some spaces available for that. So you can jump on the website and have a look at that, or you can DM me and I can send you the details personally.
Oh, yeah. And people have been asking about the individual retreat. We have 2 booked in for 2026, and the first one is going to be May.
Yeah.
It's right at the beginning. I think it's the 1st of May.
Yeah.
So if you've been listening to us for a while and that's been on your radar, it's coming up.
So you can book in now. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you again, Britta. You were amazing.
Yes,
it was nice to have a nice in-person guest because we've got a few Zoom ones. But yes, in-person is beautiful. And I'm sure I will be catching up with you for coffee this week. So I won't take any more of our time here. But yes, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.